Good morning, West Main family. We trust that everyone's had a good week and that although everybody's holed up at home, that you've managed to stay happy and healthy and safe. And we know that this is an unprecedented, strange time that we're all enduring together as the family of God. And we hope that if any of you have any special needs, if you need something brought to you, or if there's any other way that the church can help, we want to be there for you. We want to serve. So please contact myself or one of the rest of the staff. Contact the elders, one of the deacons, so that we can continue to support one another even in this difficult, strange time. Today I want to talk to us from Isaiah chapter 40, verses 27 through 31. A couple of weeks ago, we made quick reference to this text where it talks about lifting up God's people like on the wings of eagles. And we talked about the comfort and the hope that's found in that. And I was thinking this week that it would be a good text for us to focus upon and really to dive into, because there's more there than just the last verse. In fact, the entire context is a context that lifts us up and encourages us even in difficult times. The text has a familiar ring to us. Everyone truly wants to fly. In fact, that metaphor is used all throughout our culture. I've heard it in song, in poetry, in film, in music, where folks will say, if you need to rise up with wings and fly. So this idea of flying on eagle's wings is metaphorically used both in Scripture and also in culture to talk about being set free and to talk about finally rising above. Therefore, the metaphor is wrapped in the idea of hope. It's wrapped in the concept of looking to the future and having confidence that in the end, there's victory that's going to be found. And so this text is very, very comforting. And the reason it is so special is because of the common state that we all experience in humanity. And even though this unique circumstance is very different than any of us have ever experienced before, the world continues to churn on. And when this is done, and it will be done, it may be 2 weeks, it may be 2 months, we don't know when it will be, but we need to all take heart that this pandemic that we're experiencing, it's going to be over. Life is going to get back to some semblance of normal, even if it's a new normal, because the world is slightly different. But either way, this will be over. And the Lord's going to bless us, and we're going to move forward. And then there'll be something else. And then that will be over. And then there'll be something else. And that's just the pattern of this life and this world. As long as it's here until the Lord comes back and it's all destroyed, then this world is going to continue to move forward. There are times when Satan gets the best of us all. And it's hard to hang on in faith because everything seems to be going wrong. This isn't the only time that'll be. It's happened in the past in each of our lives. It's going to happen in the future. It's the cycle of this world. So it's easy to trust God when things are going well, but it's not so easy when the weight of the world is on your shoulders. And that's when this text, I believe, in Isaiah chapter 40 is so very, very, very comforting and powerful. Let's turn over and read it together. Isaiah chapter 40, verses 27 through 31. What do you say, O Jacob? And speak, O Israel. My way is hidden from the Lord, and my just claim is passed over by my God. You see, he's talking there a little bit about the mumbling and groaning and complaining that Israel is engaging in because of their current struggle. And they did have struggles. We're going through a pandemic, but they went through slavery. They went through being conquered by wicked pagan nations. They had their struggles. And he says, why is that you're complaining, that you're moaning and saying, why my way is hidden from the Lord, and my just claim is passed over? In other words, God's not listening. I justly am asking him to help, and it seems like he's not listening. Have you not known? Have you not heard? The everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, He neither faints nor is he weary. There is no searching of his understanding. He gives power to the weak, and to those who have no might, he increases their strength. So they say, don't you realize the Lord is never asleep on the job? The Lord is never not paying attention. The Lord is constantly aware. He's constantly filled with understanding, and he never, ever grows weary. And he has power to help the weak and to give strength to those who feel they don't have any. And then verse 30, even the youths shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fail. But those who wait upon the Lord shall be renewed in their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. He says, I know you feel weak. I know you feel worn out. I know you feel like you don't know how any of this is going to work out. He says, but God is right there for his people, even when they're weak, even when they feel drained and worn down by this world. That's God's specialty, to be there for his people. So there are several things as we walk through verse by verse that this teaches us about how to be renewed, how to be revived in surrendered strength, knowing that God has our back when we don't have enough power, when we don't have the answers, that God is there for us. In verse 27, when he says, why do you say, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord. My just claim is passed over by my God. He's trying to communicate that it can be difficult to see a victorious future in a defeated presence. So, in the present moment, when things are going tough, that's the hardest time to be able to visualize the future. Lenore and I, we laugh about this through the years because we've bought several new homes and transitioned, even the place where we are here now in Mississippi. Well, I'm better at being able to visualize. Lenora, she has a great creative ability to decorate and to really make things nice, but she has trouble seeing it, visualizing it. So I've told her before, I said, baby, I know you have trouble seeing what it can be, and I'll try to describe it to her. But we could knock out this wall and change this, or we could remodel this, or we could fix this. And she says, I just have trouble seeing it. And I think that's the way it is for us when life is going at its worst, when life is difficult. We know God has promised us victory. We know that God has seen us through in the past through hard times and seen his people through. But it's in those darkest moments that it's so difficult to visualize what God can do and has promised to do. The despair here in verse 27 rings so true. We all suffer and we all wonder why. And questions in the moment of pain, we need to realize, as we mentioned a couple weeks ago, those are not an indicator of doubt. They're not an indicator of a lack of faith. They're just an indicator of being in the pool of humanity. That we indeed are people. And people, we have emotions and we struggle. What's important is that even in the midst of those feelings, we continue to be faithful. We continue to move forward. I love the text in Psalm chapter 37, verses 1 through 4. And here the psalmist says, do not fret because of evildoers, nor be envious of the workers of iniquity, for they shall soon be cut down like grass and wither as the green herb. He says, don't fret, because he uses specifically evildoers and wickedness, but this would apply to every hardship in this world. He says, do not fret when things are hard. But verse 3, but trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and feed on his faithfulness. Delight yourself also in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. He says, even when you feel you're suffering, even when you're tempted to fret and to be down, he says it's at those moments
We have to renew our trust in the Lord. We have to do good anyway. We have to move forward in that regardless of how we feel, because we know in faith that God lifts up those who are weak, that his wings are what can cause us to fly. And we trust his promises and trust his word. The second thing we see in our text is in verse 28, where it says, have you not known? Have you not heard? The everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, he neither faints nor is he weary. There's no searching of his understanding. We have to begin with an acknowledgement that even when our lives seem so hard, that God is still there. That he's still there. He's not here one moment and gone the next. Just like we talked about Joseph last week. God is with us even in the prison, even in slavery, even when we're betrayed. God is still there. Regardless of how we feel, we have to decide to know that he's still there, that he has not, and he will not abandon us. You see, this is a great test of true faith when there's trials. It's a great test. But when we come through it, our faith will be even more the stronger if we just grit our teeth, buckle down, move forward, and persevere. In verse 29 of our passage, he said he gives power to the weak, and to those who have no might, he increases their strength. Now listen to the wording of how that's laid out. To those who have no might, he gives them strength. Those who appear weak, those who feel weak, he is actually making them strong. And that tells us that sometimes God is helping us even when we feel the weakest. Now you see, we wouldn't normally, through our emotions, put those things together. We would think that God is helping us when things are going great, when we seem to be victorious. But the text tells us that God is there with us even when we feel at our weakest. No matter how much we think it is, perception is not reality. The way we feel is not indicative of the way things actually are, particularly in the spiritual realm, through the lenses of faith. God is there. He's maturing us, and he's planning for us even in our darkest hours. No one said it's pleasant in the moment. It isn't. But it is often the motivation we need. And boy, that'll see us through life when we persevere and push through difficult times. And those hard times sometimes are the motivation we need throughout the rest of our lives to continue on and to do his will. I heard a story of during World War II, so many young men were drafted and so many volunteered, and they had to quickly train a large fighting force for the Pacific and for, of course, in the Atlantic and in the European theater. And so the training, they had to get these boys through basic training. And at one of the bases, they had trouble. A whole batch of new recruits, in one particular exercise, they had to swing over a large muddy pond. And so many of them would fail. They knew that if they fell into the mud, they just got a little dirty. And so recruit after recruit after recruit were falling down into the mud without putting the extra effort to get across and to succeed. Well, the drill sergeant, he didn't know exactly how to approach it, so he had an idea, and it fixed the problem. In fact, he didn't have a single recruit after that day who fell into the mud. He just simply put a gator in the water. I guess that's the original form of Gatorade, because, boy, it motivated them to get across. And sometimes the hard times in our life, when we really have to buckle down, those are a powerful motivator to mature us, to help us to move forward in our lives. It says God is there making strong even when we feel weak, if we're continuing to turn to him and to follow him. Verse 30 says this, even the youths shall faint and be weary, and young men shall utterly fail. The thing about youth is in youth we feel invincible. In our youth we feel like nothing can hurt us. In fact, that's why we've seen that down in Florida during spring break, so many young people just ignoring the advice of the medical community, going to spring break anyway. And I can tell you exactly why they did that, because they're young, and young people feel like they're invincible. But they're not. And that's what he's trying to communicate. Even the youth, they will fail and be weary. Even young men shall utterly fall. One solution in tough times is we try to do more, we try to work harder, we try to fix it, dig ourselves out of the hole. But this message is trying to communicate that no matter how strong you think you are, no matter how much ability we think we have, that there are times that to really soar, we're going to need to come to a place where we stop relying upon our own abilities and our own power, and we just rely upon him to lift us up. Where we recognize and admit that God has the solution. And there comes a point where we can't fix it. And we have to turn to him in faith. This is some of the profound truths that's been used in cliches, but even though they're cliches, they're still just as true as ever before. That there are times when you have to really let go and let God. There's a text in Proverbs 3, verses 5 through 9, where Solomon writes, "My son, do not forget my law, but let your heart keep my commandment. For length of days and long life and peace they will add to you. Let not mercy and truth forsake you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. And so find favor and high esteem in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not upon your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths." That's the point of this. Even youths will fail. Even young men will utterly fall short. He says, lean not upon your own understanding. Folks, when times are hard during this pandemic, we don't know the solution. We're facing something that all of our magnificent medical advancements, they don't know exactly the solution. So you know what we need to do as people of faith? We need to trust in the Lord. Now continue to try to be safe. Continue to follow the advice of medical professionals. Continue to stay home. Continue to wear your mask, whatever it may be. But we don't need to just rely on the medical community. We don't need to just rely on the government's response. We need to first and foremost turn to him, not lean upon our own understandings, but trust in the Lord. Trust in the Lord. Which leads us to verse 31, where he concludes this chapter and this section by saying, "But those who wait on the Lord, he shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." He says, through the valley lies the victory. We don't rise up on eagle's wings until we know what it is to be on the ground. You see, you can't really appreciate what it means to soar unless you've been on the ground. God has brought us through the trial, spurring us on so that we can fly. And I'll tell you, I look to a future, and we know this is going to be over. Someday, we're going to look back on this and we're going to tell great stories about what it was like during the pandemic. But when we get to that day, especially our young people who've never faced any trial in their life, they're going to appreciate the freedoms they've had. Being able to go and be able to do. They're going to appreciate being able to just walk through a crowded store or sit in a movie theater. You see, being able to endure the hardship causes us to truly be able to appreciate the blessings. You can't soar until you know what it's been like to be on the ground. It's kind of like baby eagles, eaglets they call them. And when they hatch from their mother's eggs, the nest, the first layer of the nest that a mother eagle, she will pack it down with jagged rocks and thorns, and then over the top she'll put a soft lining of fur and feathers and wool. And when those tiny eaglets are born, it's just a comfortable, perfect environment. Full wool, feathers, fur, and they'll be comfortable until the day comes when she says and thinks they need to now fly. Because you see, if they can just live their whole lives being fed by their mama and in this warm, comfortable environment, they'll never take the risk, take the chance, learn how to fly themselves. So what she does is she scratches up that nest, and then that turns up all those thorns and jagged rocks. Suddenly it's not comfortable anymore. And guess what? Little baby eaglets, they then start to venture out of the nest and learn how to fly. So you see, God can take these times and he can make us better than we've ever been. We just have to continue on in faith, trust him, not lean on our own understandings, and move forward. In Psalm 55 verse 22, it says, "Cast your burdens on the Lord, and he will sustain you. He shall never permit the righteous to be moved." We need to remember, even in the midst of this strange times, and in the midst of this unprecedented pandemic, that if we cast our hope on the Lord, he never lets down the righteous. And it may be hard, there may be difficult days, but in the end, he can cause us once more to soar, even higher than we did before. Are we living in a defeated presence? Are we seemingly digging our hole deeper and deeper? Well, there's good news. If you're discouraged today by all of this, and the news is getting you down, and you're so anxious about where things are going, what's going to happen, rest assured there is light at the end of the tunnel. There's a shoulder to lean on, a divine shoulder, a strong shoulder to lean on, if we just press forward. Well, we talked about cliches already, so I'm going to close with one. Probably the best known poem in the religious world, called Footsteps in the Sand. One night a man had a dream. He dreamed he was walking along the beach with the Lord. Scenes from his life flashed across the sky, and he noticed two sets of footprints in the sand, one belonging to him and the other to the Lord. When the last scene of his life had flashed before him, he recalled that at the lowest and saddest times in his life, there was only one set of footprints. Dismayed, he asked, "Lord, you said that once I decided to follow you, you'd walk with me all the way. I don't understand why, when I needed you the most, you would leave me." And the Lord replied, "My precious child, I love you. I would never leave you. During your times of trial and suffering, when you saw only one set of footprints, that was when I carried you." Here at the West Main Church of Christ, let's let the Lord carry us through these difficult times. If there's any need in your life, please contact one of the shepherds, one of the staff members, and continue to stay safe, stay healthy, because we love you. God bless.